Hi, everybody. How's it going? So thanks for braving the rain, and I've got lots to talk about. So let's get right into it. My name is Justin Schier. I've been doing development for about 20 years now. I'm a little bit in the tiny bit older generation, but I've been doing it most of my life, and here's who I am. I've been working for SCRUFF for about 3 years. Before that, I've been building companies and co-founding companies, several, since 1999 was my first one, starting out with web development and into kind of some other spaces as well. And I've just taken on the roles of being mostly a technical person, but I'm also a designer. So I design tons of visual stuff, and I love the interplay between the two as well, because I can be so creative. And I can also be creative with my business skills as well. And even though I'm not one of the C-level people at this company, I still have a lot of input on how the product is for SCRUFF. So based in New York City, and I'm pretty gay, so. So just very quickly, on a given day, of all the things that I'm working on, I write server code, I fight spam, I design something, I'll send out a engagement campaign, and then I'll have my morning coffee, and then get on with the rest of my day. Always a lot going on. And one more thing, I'm just obsessed with techno, and I don't know if there's any other techno people in here, but that's one of the reasons I love Montreal so much. And I think in the last year I've been up here. This is my 5th time, so just all the time I love that. So anyways, here's SCRUFF, and I want to tell you a little bit about what it is first, and how it what it looks like and how it works, just for a couple minutes, and why you guys should care about it. So here's a little video that just shows all the features. It's only, I think, less than a minute long. All right, so you can see there's a lot in our app. It's one of the most feature-rich apps of its kind in the world. And it's been out since 2010. So just very quickly, show of hands, who's ever even heard of SCRUFF before? And who's on SCRUFF? This row right here. Okay. So anyway, this talk really, I think you'll get a lot out of it, even though you may never have heard of SCRUFF before. So let's see, next slide. So it's, what is it really? Is it a hookup app? Is it a dating app? We call it a social app. It's a hookup app. But there's a lot more you can do in there too. And there's a lot of reasons people spend time in SCRUFF. It's not just looking for other guys. It's looking for relationships. There's all kinds of travel stuff in there. But really, it's focused around the guys. Who is our niche? And that's where it brings us back to the title of our talk. So it's really about the guys. This is an all-male app. But that's a part of society. That's 50% right there. And then gays, is a subculture. And really, our app kind of falls in even a narrower subculture than that. I mean, there's apps for kind of skinnier guys. There's apps for middle-y whatever guys. And there's apps for bigger guys. And we're kind of in the middle. So just the way it kind of falls. So that's how we've kind of found our niche over time. We want to be as inclusive as possible. Any guys, that are into other guys, we would love to have them on our app. But it's just kind of naturally fallen into this valley with the other apps that are out there. So we have about 12 million profiles that have been created since 2010. 70 million chat messages sent per week. We're the highest rated gay dating app in several surveys that have been taken. and people spend, the active members spend about 77 minutes per day. So that's actually on par with Facebook kind of time people are spending. And we have about 150,000 API requests per minute, all day, every day, and we just have to be up all the time. And I just want to quickly ask, how many people in here would call yourselves a tech person? Okay, because I have a couple little tech tips along the way, and if there was no tech people, I was going to skip those. But I think they really are pretty cool, so you guys, even if you're not techie, you would like them. Very quickly, to finish this up, we were one of the first apps to store all the messages in the cloud, and we have a kind of match feature, which it's sort of like Tinder, where you can swipe left or right, but it gives us the data we need to feed into our machine learning of what other type of guys we can recommend for you. We have a whole travel section with cities all over the world, gay travel destinations. And you can see who's there, who's visiting soon. And so here's what we've kind of figured out over the 7 years that we've been in business. And I'll show you how these relate to your niche. So one, design really is king. You've got to have a great design app. You've got to have a great design product. You're dead if you don't have that. It's got to be better than your competition, because they've always got some advantage, like huge deep pockets or some kind of connections that you don't have, so you've got to be better. And here's where finding and knowing your niche is the most important thing, is knowing and loving your community. So most of us that work on the app are gays, and we love our community, and there's just a lot of heart there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the business part of evolving your revenue model and how that relates to your niche. And at the end, I'm going to end with a few killer principles and tech tips that we found along the way. So SCRUFF has some unique challenges that we've had to continuously deal with. For one thing, out of 196 countries in the world, 74 have some form of state-sponsored homophobia, meaning that it's illegal to be gay in that country. So instead of shutting it off in those countries, we allow people to use it, but we handle their situation a little bit differently, and I'll get into that in a second. Gays are a vulnerable group, and there is such thing as bias and hate crimes that happen. So we've got to be careful about how we reveal location information. And there's another unique challenge is basically what you saw in the app was a grid of guys, and guys are posting those, and we put those pictures up right away. So it's very possible people can upload nude pictures as their face picture, and I'm looking at you Brazilians, because they do this a lot. And they don't seem to get the hint about not doing that, but and then we have we have pretty much fixed community size in the world that we have to compete with the other apps for, and so this is one lesson, is find what your unique challenges are and plan ahead for them from day one. And again, this is about thoughtfulness, about your community. This is a real Brazilian scruff guy. Okay, and then we have a couple of unique advantages, which is basically gays are horny guys, and that is never going to go away, ever, ever, ever. So that kind of demand is great, and we can count on it, and we love it. New competitors that come out, they don't really have the street cred that we have of being around and being so solid and such a good app for so long. We've built it from the ground up. We have cool branding that the guys actually want to wear. It's not like you have to give people a T-shirt and hopefully they'll put it on. People actually buy our merchandise and love our brand so much. And we use humor quite a bit in our communications. So, does anybody have any questions so far? I just want to make sure everybody's tracking. Okay. So here's first kind of main principle is about design. And one point I want to make is that every single person in the company, whether you're the CEO or an actual designer in your title or a developer, you are a designer on your app. If you have any influence on how your product or your app looks and feels and interacts with your customers. You are a designer, and you need to own that. Because everybody honestly has something to bring to the table. That's one great thing about our team is we're small, I think about 10 people, but every single person has an influence on how certain decisions about what goes into the app, and each person has a very unique perspective. Everybody's coming from a different place in their life, so know that what you bring to the table has value. We use surprise and delight quite a bit in our app, which I'm sure you've heard before. But an example would be we'll send out a push notification to remind everybody about something. Maybe we did one, I think, on. I think we did one on April 20th, and it was about. It said the guys on SCRUFF seem 420 times hungrier today. Anyways, so. One cool thing about design is it's iterative, and I'll get a little more into this, but when you capture the data on how people are using your app, you can actually look back at it and make design decisions based on that data. And the way we implement that is every little action that somebody takes in the app, every button they tap, everything they swipe, we record in a database, and it's streaming data into our infrastructure, and we can go back later on and see exactly how they use it in an anonymized way. So we can see how many people are using a certain feature, and we can make tweaks, decisions based on that. And like I said, our app is one of the most feature-rich in the industry, and we have to be very careful when we want to add something new to the UI. And that's something that you have to really think about how people are using your app. So. Like I said, always be solving your customers' problems in a new and clever way. There's always a way to make something simpler. There's always a way to make something easier to find and to get people what they want faster. That's really, actually, as a designer, my number one go-to principle on design is how can you get someone from point A to point B in the quickest time possible, and that includes having them learn how to use that. So the less learning they have to do, the better. And the guys just want to get to the other guys. So the faster you can get them there, the better. Always be innovating. I talked about this already. And you really have to decide how much effort you want to put into making some new feature based on how long it will take to get to market. So here's another principle that we really take to heart every day is our community is our family. We are our community. And you may or may not be directly in the community that you're designing for, but the more you can, people in your company can know them and be part of that community, the better. And we really do treat our community like our family. And that goes down to every decision that you make. So we just are very conscientious about the decisions we make, and again, how the app is going to be used in other countries throughout the world, and knowing the people that we serve as well as we can by we have lots of events that we do, and we're constantly talking to all of our members. We respect the people we work with. We are extremely thoughtful, and we celebrate in the good times. Like when marriage equality passed, we had lots of celebrations there, and in tough times like the Pulse shooting, we really come together and support each other. And it's more than just at that point looking for a guy to hook up with. So that was one of the main reasons that I really wanted to work for SCRUFF. Is it was very evident from day one that the team was like this. We have all kinds of other things that help our community. We have something called Benevolent Ads. So it's a part of the app that is a free ad network for nonprofits, and lots of nonprofits have advertised through here in our app, and it's extremely geo-targeted, and it's very direct connection between who those nonprofits are trying to serve, that we can get that information in front of in the app. We have the ability to send push notifications in a crisis situation, and that's been used a couple times in the past. And we try to make everyone feel included. So getting a little bit more into the depth of how do we protect our members. So that's one thing that you do with your family is you protect them. So we put a lot of effort into our security. We have extremely high security, or highly secure infrastructure, and we use a principle called defense in depth, where you have to think about the problems and the possible attacks that could come. I mean, there's so many different ways that we could be attacked by hackers, by excuse me, I need some water. By spammers, scammers. There's all kinds of things that could go wrong. And we have several measures we have in place. Obviously, the high security. We use rate limiting on our servers. This is something that you might not realize you need on day one, but it's a really critical piece and something that we've paid a lot of attention to. We prevent location pinpointing, which could happen through entrapment, let's say in certain countries where this thing that just happened in Chechnya was an example of that, where it's possible that the authorities could actually use the app to try and find gays and round them up. And so we have ways of preventing that. We have gay travel advisories, where if you travel to one of those countries or you're in if you live there, you'll get detailed information. I have a little bit more slides on that too. And we've put a ton of effort. I mean, I spend 2 to 3 hours of my day every day probably fighting spam because it's so important. It's such a major thing that Scruff has that the other apps kind of can't compete with. We just really have very little spam in the app. So the defense in depth and security, it's so important for people to feel secure in using our app. So we know what we're protecting, we know why we're protecting it, and that's what you got to think through from the beginning. Use the golden rule. Like, if you were that person, wouldn't you want your location and your information protected? Get help from experts when you need it, and a good principle is the weakest link is only as good as your security. Very quickly on rate limiting, the way we do this is every single type of API call in our app, meaning if you're loading a grid or if you're woofing at somebody, which is our way of saying hi, or sending a chat message, there's different rates that you might do that, and we actually go down to the minute level of thinking what would an average person need to do. And what this does is prevents hackers from just writing a script to hit our server over and over. So if you are a hacker and you hit too many times, you start getting a delay, and you start getting longer delays. And if you keep doing it, your IP address will get blacklisted, and you will no longer be able to reach Scruff. So it's a really good defensive measure that a lot of people might not have even heard of. But any kind of a high volume or potentially risky data set that you have, this is a great protective measure. This is a map of where in the world it's illegal to be gay, which is insane. But there's a lot of red on that map, and we pay a lot of attention to it. And this data comes from ILGA, which is updated every year. And we pay attention to this, and we put it on our website and in our travel advisories. So we keep this totally up to date because laws change each year, and we always keep the most relevant information in front of our users. Here's how it's possible to find someone's location. If you know the distance to them from 3 separate areas, you can use trigonometry to figure out their exact location. So we know this, and in those countries, and it's also an option anyone can turn on in the app. We use randomization, small amounts of randomization, to make this so it's impossible to do. where it's still useful in the app. And we also make it needs to be different based on how many people are around you, right? So how much we randomize. So it's just a cool little tech thing that we've done, and we've actually shared this with our competitors so they can do the same thing. And that's something that if you ever come up with something like this, it's a great thing to do, to know your competitors and reach out to them, and again, protect your community, because your community is not only using your app, they're using other apps too. So this is a little bit more about the business side. So we actually started out as a free app, and we evolved over time to have basically a freemium model where we have a pro membership for guys that just want more things in the app. And one really cool business tip is we have found several points where people will want to pay for more. So we found some key things to limit in the app. For free members, you can still use it. There's really nothing you can't do in the app. But for additional, like if you want to see more guys in your grid, or you want to be able to do advanced search, there's something called stealth mode where you can kind of look at guys, but they won't know that you viewed them. Sending and receiving video. These are all things that we've listened to our members, and that they've really told us that they want and willing to pay for. So we've evolved to be less than 5% of our income is from ad revenue. So it's mostly on the pro memberships. We have to be aware of what the competitors are doing, because we can't have something that's totally super different from them. For instance, like the sending and receiving video. So one thing that I would say as kind of a business and tech tip is, if you have multiple sources of revenue, and you can graph them against each other over time, because you might be able to spot a trend that's happening. Okay, so I have about 6 killer principles, and then I'll open up for questions. Does anybody have any questions right at the moment? Okay, so first killer principle is if something is worth doing, it's worth spending the time to do it right. There's been several instances where we've taken on projects that I thought were going to take 2 days, and my CEO is going, no, you need to spend 2 to 3 months on that. You need to do that right, or else it's not worth doing at all. There's always a temptation to rush through things when you're building, but as your product matures and evolves, that kind of pressure should ease up, and you need to invest the time to really take your great designs and make them work well too. And something that's really worked great for me working on projects is finding a mentor. It doesn't have to be somebody that maybe even knows a lot more than you, just somebody that you can collaborate with and talk on a daily basis of projects that you're working on, something that you find difficult or you need to talk through on a regular basis. Why not have a little 5-minute status meeting with somebody about a project and keep it on track? Another killer principle is good developers know how to work through and around a problem, but great developers don't stop until they fully understand a problem, then solve the root cause. This is so important, especially, like I said, we've got such a fast-paced traffic coming into our app. We have got to, if there's ever a problem, we've really got to understand every piece of it before we make a solution, because you could only paint yourself into a corner further. This really goes for technical and business problems too. There's going to be problems that you're solving every single day in your business, especially in your first couple of years. Find the time to really understand the problems. And one thing I do is, in the certain cases where it's just so urgent, you don't even have the time, you know how you can patch it, create a ticket in your ticket system that's got on the highest priority to do a real fix the next day, if you just need to get the system back up, let's say. This is something that I've kind of learned through my whole career, which is, if you are a technology company, if you have something that you are offering to people, you better be an expert in that thing. Read books, learn everything you can. Don't just expect a couple of blog posts are going to be good enough. You really have to know what you're doing. And another thing, just as far as working every day that's kind of related to this is the development methodologies are great, but it's really about keeping your people unblocked. So anybody that's working for you, anybody that's working with you, if you can keep them unblocked, that's the most important thing, rather than having long meetings about things. Another thing is just for us, we've had to just be so solid with our reliability, and it's something that we've put a lot of effort into. Our guys say it all the time. They said, "You guys are the app that works," and that really means a lot. I mean, there's so much effort goes into that, but it's when we talk to our members, it comes through, and that's why one reason they really love Scruff. We have about half of our staff is customer service people, so we have people available 24/7. We respond to every ticket within 24 hours, and urgent ones I think within 12 hours. So we have people part-time all over the planet doing this remotely. It's just something that has worked for us, and so our members again know that they always have somebody that they can talk to. And like I said about your app, your uptime and your reliability need to be better than your competitors as well. So one cool tech tip that I want to pass along is something that I think implemented a few years ago, not right at the beginning, but where it says queue all rights there. What that means is anytime that we're going to make a change in our database, like let's say you send a chat message or you send, let's say you log in or anything that's going to update a record in the database, we put it in a queue and that queue gets processed. So the upside of that is if there's ever a code push that breaks everything, or if there's a, let's say an infrastructure issue where on Amazon, let's say half of Amazon goes down, like has happened before, everything's just in the queue and just waiting. And then as soon as you fix that problem, now the database writes will start again. So there's really no downside to doing it on a normal basis. It doesn't slow anything down. It's just, it's a layer of protection, and it's really saved our butt many times. 2 more to go. So this is about your team, and we just spend so much time trying to find people that, like I said, our team is so solid. They're so thoughtful. They're such wonderful guys, and it really comes across to our members as well. So just keep looking and looking and looking. Don't rush to hire somebody just because you need them. Find the right person. And something that we do internally a lot is we teach people. So everybody in the company has something to teach others. And so the guys that I work with, I'm always teaching them things, and I love learning from them too. Set aside time to do that. It really builds a culture of trust in your company, and again, your audience will notice. And here's the last one, which is do experiments. There's lots of things you can do. People will really respond to things, but you don't know what they're going to respond to. So when it comes to a campaign or a new feature or something that you're changing in the app, find a way to roll it out to a small section of your community and get feedback on it. Use a scientific method. I'm actually of science background, and it's something that's served me very well. We find ways of measuring something, whatever we want to move the needle on first. Then we set a goal for how much % we think we can improve that, and then we try different things, and we analyze the results. And you got to put the time into that. That'll make your product better. That'll make your community happier. And don't be afraid to make big changes. Sometimes when people tell you that something's really bad, you gotta listen. So that is my talk. We are hiring. We're New York based. We have free Equinox and really great benefits. Amazing team. And this is the jobs that we're looking at hiring right now. more data scientists, a COO, product manager, and iOS, Android, and Ruby developers. So, is there any questions I can answer for anybody? Anyone? Go ahead. Oh, he's got a mic. He's got a mic for you.
Okay. Thank you. Did you make a priority to collect data on every time someone navigated to a different part of the app and etc. before even developing the application's features?
You know, it's something that we've been working on the last couple of years. So the app was pretty far along before we did that. If I had to do over again, I would have done it much sooner because there's so much we learn every time we look at the data. It's an amazing way of working.
Great chat, very insightful.
Thank you.
Just wondering about that data analysis. You know, when you've got an entire social media platform and limited team, how do you decide, you know, what data to look at when you're collecting everything?
Right.
And yeah, it's about the insight. So how do you prioritize that?
I mean, it's one way of prioritizing it is just what feature am I trying to work on now, or what is my biggest customer service area of complaints right now. So it's useful in solving problems, and it's useful in designing and improving pieces of the app too. So I think it's basically what you're interested in right now. If you're talking about how do you know what in your app needs fixing, or what areas of your product could use some help, I think that's more about listening to your customers in a qualitative way. The data that we're collecting really is the quantitative piece of that. So I think the qualitative part, like I said, looking at what is your biggest customer service issue every month, and start there and solve that. And of course, just talk to people. Anybody else? Oh, right here.
Yeah, I have a question. You said at first that like the target audience for SCRUFF was basically an in-between between like smaller guy and bigger guy.
Yeah.
But what was the first audience SCRUFF thought it had, and how did they move toward their niche, or how did you find which was the best one?
Yeah, I think that the name SCRUFF kind of says a little bit about it, which is I think that at the time Grindr was one of the only other apps out there, and there was really nothing else. And I think that we actually thought about going after a little bit scruffier looking guys with beards and maybe a little bit bigger guys. And it was just a conscious decision. That hasn't changed all that much, to be honest, even though we would love everybody to be on our app. It's just the way the chips have kind of fallen.
Can you just go a bit deeper about when you said it was free and then eventually you became, how do you say, people
It's a
start...
SCRUFF Pro is our paid feature. So, when we first started the app, it was purely ad-driven, and I think the idea was, you know, is there a way to make more revenue? Ads really don't pay that much, you know. So even if you have huge amount of traffic, unless you have some really unique way of delivering ads, they're just not very. They don't pay very much. So this is before I actually joined the company, but from what I know is they decided to figure out some pain points that people want to, you know, have expanded. Be able to. I think in the free version you can only see, I think, 50 or 100 nearby guys, maybe 150. But some guys want to spend more time and scroll down a lot farther, and maybe widen the circle out a little bit, or be able to search. So each of these things we figured out that people would pay for, and that's how. We started building memberships over time and listening and continuously adding. I think we have something like 32 features now that you get with Pro. So that's built from probably 2 or 3 at the beginning to, you know, over 30 now. Any other questions?
So you guys said you essentially charge per feature?
No, it's not per
Or-
feature. It's
oh, okay.
you're either pro or you're not.
Oh, okay.
So it's a monthly. I think it's different in every country, but yeah, it's like a monthly amount.
Because you had in one of your slides, figure out what people are willing to pay for or what they want to solve a problem. So if you've got tons of features you're looking at and you're trying to go from freemium into paid, how do you figure out which one should we charge for? Do you do little tests or do you call your customers? Like what are some of the tips that you have?
That's a tough question. Honestly, it's I think you have to make some guesses, honestly, and you've got to start with something small. But there's so many examples of this out in the world too. So there's got to be competitors that have done things that are similar to this. So you've probably got something to go on. Unless you're in a totally new area. But like every SaaS-based company has tiers of pricing, and looking at sets of features. If you're going to have multiple price tiers, it's about all I can tell you. Anybody else? We have 2 more minutes.
Yes. So now you have 12 million people following SCRUFF, and you've really conquered your niche. What's next?
I think you saw out here the artificial intelligence, machine learning. How do you apply that to dating apps? Well, there's one really good way. Like I said, we have the data on what type of guys that you like, what type of guys you've chatted with, and we can actually feed that in machine learning and be more proactive, I think. So proactive and really digging into our data in a way, giving it back to our members. I'm trying to push this in a kind of a CRM type of direction, right? Because it's sort of a customer relationship management with maybe the guys that you're into, right? So you want to maintain that relationship over time. We don't have to get too crazy and businessy with it, but some of the cool things about CRM are they'll surface something for you at the right time, and that's what we're looking at next.
So your application is very community-based. It's very based on what people want. Have you ever discovered something which people actually didn't want and had to roll back?
Yeah, we have one good example of that, actually. So trying to be able to tell the story right. We had this thing called Blue Dot. So in our app, we have orange dots and green dots. So on the profile. So the orange means that you haven't been on in the last 2 hours, but you have been on in the last day. And green means you've been on, I think, in the last hour or two. And it switches. So it's easy looking through the grid to see who's been in the app or is online now. Scruff introduced a blue dot, which was kind of used sort of for semi-celebrities or people that were just power users of the app, and that actually really backfired. It caused a lot of resentment, and after about a year, they totally got rid of it. Yeah. Okay, I think that's about all the time we have. So thank you very much.